The D'Angelo Russell quote machine is on an absolute heater right now. I find myself truly mesmerized and curious about what it's like to be this guy's teammate. I remember some of the stuff that came out about him in Minnesota last year with Rudy, pointing him out to be just an awful teammate and pseudo leadership figure, and the whole Nick Young fiasco when he was, listen, that was a long, long time ago. I believe he was still a rookie, maybe a second year, but that's probably the most dramatic thing that has ever happened with him, as his output on the court, while semi-substantial, hasn't been to the level that it would put all the extra stuff into the background. His level of play hasn't ever really trumped the potential baggage of having him on your team. I mean, maybe they just keep it more in-house when he has something wild to say, because I really do wonder how often stuff like this comes out of his mouth, just not to the media, but so then now he's just feeling himself more and more. He has to fire off some absolute gems. I think it started with, quote, being publicly humiliated has made me an on-court killer. I really have fun out there, and respectfully, my approach is all these people came to see AD, LeBron, but I'm stealing the show. This was after a nice stretch of games. The Lakers certainly liked how he was playing, and interpreting this as a guy gaining the confidence he needs in his own way is certainly the positive way to react to a quote like that. But then when things go wrong, and for the Lakers this season, they do a lot, it totally backfires. Recently, we're hearing more about the tension between him and Coach Darvin Ham, who is obviously under the microscope all the time. Lakers fans seem to agree that he is not the answer at head coach for this team. I certainly agree, but I think he's far from the only issue here. And D'Lo berating him about ancient history via this article by Dave McMenamin with Dennis Schroeder, and creating this sort of competition there that has turned entirely sour. Just yet another instance of unnecessary drama and distraction that doesn't need to exist in the eyes of the media and the general public. D'Lo, he's shooting a career high, 42% from three this year. Stats across the board are fairly similar to last year, but his shooting is a little down in two-point range. This guy always had the talent. He always had the ability. It's what got him drafted number 2 overall and into the All-Star game by his 4th season, but since then hasn't really amounted to more. The career hasn't really turned up since then, and D'Lo, he's always struggled with consistency, and it feels like that's honestly been an issue even more so in this current Lakers era than before. And I don't want to act like that's entirely his fault. We must take into account the difficulty of playing alongside LeBron James, especially as a ball-handling type of player, not to mention the touches that need to go to Austin Reeves and Anthony Davis for this team for a ball-dominant player. D'Angelo Russell, I can definitely understand the difficulty of establishing and maintaining rhythm when you can't be the hub of the offense nearly all the time. He first had to acclimate to taking more of a backseat, I believe, during his time in Minnesota. It feels like being the third or fourth guy on a team that contends for something is the role for him. If there's any role for him on a contending team, the guy hasn't ever established himself as a winning type of player, even though it's obvious what he's capable at times. When they gave him the keys to the offense when LeBron was out against Milwaukee and he torched the Bucks for the best game of the year, 44 points and the W. But I remember when he had that quote that he wants to be Derek White. You want to be Derek White. You don't guard. I think there was like a 3-game stretch when he decided he wanted to actually try on defense. Now the guy can't even check De'Aaron Fox. And it's not like he was maybe going to stop De'Aaron Fox, but he's not even taking the challenge. If you wanted to be Derek White, you would be guarding De'Aaron Fox. And he's not a good defender. But how silly of a quote was that? Why would he say that? 2 weeks went by, and we were like, wow, that was really dumb. And he just didn't back it up at all. The defense, by the way, is the major issue with this team. If there is one issue, you don't have Jared Vanderbilt anymore, and you don't play Max Christie, so every backcourt player is a negative on D, and you could even say that every non-AD player on the court is there primarily for offense. Taurean Prince doesn't really get in the game that much, and even if he did, he's not going to shut down anybody. But you are now putting way too much emphasis on AD saving you on that end of the floor, and then when he has to guard somebody like Sabonis or Joker, he gets absolutely fried. And so, of course, the Lakers lost to the Kings again last night, capping off a season sweep for Sacramento as Domantas Sabonis continues his career domination on Anthony Davis's head. D'Angelo Russell finished with a whopping 6 points on 2 for 9 shooting, following the barrage of quotes and self-created headlines. The guy, he's been getting busy in the media, and it's just a disaster for the LA Lakers, who don't need yet another vessel of drama or controversy, given their continued underperformance. But you know the deal. This is how it goes. Now, with all that said, this season is not a done deal for the LA Lakers. Technically, they will end up in the play-in, almost certainly. I really do not see a scenario where they can end up, even the 7 seed feels really far away for them. I don't think they're going any higher than 9, but the fact that they've been able to stay ahead of Golden State, they can handle Golden State in a play-in, especially in their building, and then winning one more game. You know, LeBron in a single elimination game, you just wouldn't bet against him in general. And then if you get to face OKC, I mean, they could draw Minnesota, and then of course Denver is the worst case scenario. They have no chance in that series. If they draw OKC, that is a perfect scenario because you're in and you can take down the 1 seed and you can go into round 2 with some real momentum and completely change the narrative on your season. The problem is that all of this nonsense that's going on, it's taking a psychological toll on the team. Clearly there is just a lot of disappointment within the organization about underachievement and they should be so much better than they are. And it's true. So it's hard to see them really overcoming that. But then once you get into if you actually get into the playoffs and you have a favorable matchup, what does all that matters? You got to beat a team 4 games out of 7. And with a team like this in a loaded Western Conference, it's a very interesting year because a lot of the teams at the top, you know, Minnesota and OKC, these are not teams that are familiar with that level of status, that are familiar going into the playoffs with this immense pressure. And the Lakers coming in as a low seed could be the last thing that any of these young teams want to see in that first playoff series. Like I said, if you get Denver, yeah, no chance, but that's only a 1 in 3. I mean, those 3 teams at the top, I feel like Minnesota probably falls a little bit without Cat right now, and Denver is going to be in 1 or 2 with OKC. But at the end of the day, it's Darvin Ham coaching this team. The locker room doesn't seem very good. You know, the general chemistry is just off, and again, you don't have any defenders on this team besides AD. That's not going to get you far in the playoffs. So when it comes back to D'Lo, this is a guy that's had excellent stretches here and there this year, last year, but when the stakes rise, you get turned into a cone by Bruce Brown, and he did that all by himself. This guy is way too talented to let that happen and have his offense disappear at the same time when he could be impacting the game as a playmaker or scorer or whatever his team needs from him at that end. The truth also is that the Lakers are a dysfunctional mess that continue to underachieve, and the antics from D'Lo, far from the sole source of issues with this team. And even though it feels over, it's not. But yeah, the vibes are bad. The vibes are bad. That's all I can really say.